Our theme this month is It's Your Life. And today's topic is the Anatomy of Healing Prayer. That title came into being very early in the ministry of Ernest Holmes. As a matter of fact, it's contained within this packet. Wait till I show you this, which is titled The Absolute. Came out in November of 1920. And they didn't have computers then. What did they have? Typewriters. This was all typewritten. And eventually, when copiers came into existence, copied. So this is a copy of the original. It's heavy, too. It showed up again and again in Dr. Holmes' writings, including the book titled The Anatomy of Healing Prayer. And some of you already have this book, and if you don't have it, it might be something you'd like to add to your library. The Anatomy of Healing Prayer also showed up in the philosophy of Ernest Holmes, in the Ernest Holmes papers, and in The Magic of the Mind. And some of you have heard me speak about The Magic of the Mind, which is the most powerful little book Ernest Holmes ever wrote. And we'll talk more about that later. So you see, it can go from several pounds to just a few ounces, and the power of the message remains just as strong. So I want to open this talk this morning by saying that the healing prayer, which Holmes refers to in his writings, in his talks, and in his classes, that is different than what most of us called prayer before we began studying the science of mind. The basis of the science of mind is that spiritual mind treatment is the heart of our work. Hazel Holmes, Ernest's wife, in her own right, an extremely successful licensed prayer practitioner, was heard saying this: be sure your treatment is not just your desire or wistful thinking, wishing. Be certain that when you're through with it, meaning the spiritual mind treatment that you do, each spiritual mind treatment that you do, the law and order of the universe is behind it, and you have nothing more to do with it. The treatment is the authority of truth, and that's truth with a capital T, incidentally, and not of the one who announces it. It's not about us trying to make something happen. And we talk about that, but in a little different use of words than what she said there. What she said there is, and you have nothing to do with it. What she meant by that was, once you speak your word and it's out there, and Spirit is acting upon it through the process we call the creative process. And if you remember, those of you who have studied spirit, soul, and body, soul is a creative medium through which your intentions are made available or recognized by Spirit. And whatever you have put out there is already here for you to accept. So consequently, when we are not clear with our words, or we have not defined what it is we intend, once we've done that, all of the rest of this goes into action. So if it doesn't look like what you were expecting, when you recognize its presence, that's why. So that's what she was talking about. Be selective in your words. That's why I like that phrase that I heard come up in Standing in the Light. Exceed my expectations. Exceed is different than similar to my expectations. Or whatever you think, God, send it back. exceed my expectations, I've already established what my expectations are. So it can only be better than that. And that's really important because that's staying in the positive. You are just as powerful in the negative, but why on earth would you want to do that? So, for ease in speaking your own spiritual mind treatments, or for comfort in hearing a prayer practitioner speak words on your behalf, there are 5 steps in the typical spiritual mind treatment. There are times when we use 7 steps, and you'll hear us refer to that as an argumentative spiritual mind treatment. In either case, though, these steps are provided for your learning pleasure, folks, and not because they are by decree, either ours or Spirit's. They're like training wheels to keep us on track and make it possible for us to concentrate on our thoughts, expressing them through our words. So I want to talk for a moment about the word anatomy, the anatomy of healing prayer. Holmes uses that part of the definition of the word anatomy in his writings to establish that spiritual mind treatment has makeup, it has composition, it has form, it has structure. He writes about the dynamics and the analysis of treatment, how treatment clarifies our thought. He writes about what happens when we do a spiritual mind treatment and what spiritual mind healing is and looks like. And all of that is in this book. I could stand here and read this to you for hours, or you could get the book yourself and read it for yourself, because each of those statements I just made about dynamics and analysis of treatment, how treatment clarifies our thoughts, what happens when we do a spiritual mind treatment, and what spiritual mind healing is. Those are all sections within this book. So, well worth looking into. So, Arliss talked about it earlier. I'm going to bring this book up. Tamara talked about this too earlier before we started the service. How many of you actually have one of these or have read one, not this one necessarily, or have read one of these? You're familiar with the Science of Mind magazine itself. Cool. Nice. Every month in the Science of Mind magazine, there is a page titled What We Believe. It's the original and complete version of what we say together every Sunday morning when we do our Declaration of Principles. That's a synopsis of this. So this is the original and complete version of the Declaration of Principles, which is used for a variety of reasons as we come to recognize all there is within the construct of science of mind or religious science. Now, you don't have to memorize this page-long statement in order to be a student of the science of mind or a religious scientist. You're not required to recite it on command or to pay homage to those who do. And I wasn't going to read this to you this morning, thinking that it would take too much of our time together. Then I stopped and I thought about that, and I took the time to read it to myself out loud. And it took me 1 minute and 46 seconds. Well, surely, I said to myself, it's certainly worth that much time. In fact, what I really thought to myself was, whoa, I almost got caught in that same trap that I hear expressed by others on occasion when they say, oh, well, I just don't have time to meditate, or I don't have time to do a spiritual practice every day. And when I hear that, I respond, always respond, sometimes in my mind, but more often than not by uttering the words, well, you have all the time there is. Or it's in how you choose to use your time. So this thought process that I went through about this was really a thank you, God, for getting my attention. Read the unabridged Declaration of Principles. And in the process, now all of you here, and those who will be listening to this talk on YouTube, know where to find it. So let me read it to you. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self-existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by it. The manifest universe is the body of God. It's the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. We believe in the individualization of the Spirit in us, and that all people are individualizations of the one Spirit. We believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul, forever and ever expanding. We believe that heaven is within us, and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. We believe the ultimate goal of life is to be a complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. We believe in the unity of all life, and that the highest God and the most innermost God is one God. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. We believe in the direct revelation of truth through our intuitive and spiritual nature, and that anyone may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. We believe that the universal Spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, and that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. We believe in the healing of the sick and control of conditions through the power of the mind. We believe in the eternal goodness, the eternal lovingness, and the eternal givingness of life to all. We believe in our own soul, our own spirit, and our own destiny, for we understand that the life of all is God. Wow, huh? So what does that have to do with the Anatomy of Healing Prayer? Well, if you took one of these statements as the declaration or realization in your Science of Mind treatment each day, you would be building your spiritual practice onward and upward. For those of you who may not know how to do the other 4 steps that are included in this spiritual mind treatment method I made reference to a few minutes ago, we're going to begin recording these opening treatments, as I mentioned to you earlier in the service, that are done here each Sunday morning, and including them on the YouTube posting of the talks themselves. So you'll then have the opportunity to listen to them again and to hear those steps unfolding, not to substitute for your own words, but rather when you do your spiritual work, you have guidelines to refer to. And then to let the flow of your own words guide you for your own spiritual best outcome. And this week, during our class on this thing called You, which we do on Tuesday afternoons, we're going to be doing exercises in those 5 steps in treatment. So you're welcome to join us, even though you may not be taking the full class. We'll be happy to give you details on that after the service, where, when, and let us know if you're coming so we can make room for you. So as our dear founder, Dr. Ernie, said in his textbook, quote, "Ignorance is no excuse," unquote, for not living a life well lived. And as I showed you before, the cover of this magazine this month says it so well. Look at that. And the headline over it is "Living a Luminous Life," and then down below, "Rooted in Truth." How nice. How positive. So when religious scientists talk about healing prayer, or even the word healing, we're often corrected or scorned by those who believe what is wrong with them, and I've got wrong in quotation marks on purpose in this script. Whatever is wrong with them cannot be healed. And of course, that's true. When we believe we cannot be healed, we're right. When we believe we can be healed, we're right. What's the difference? There is no difference. And once again, up comes page 52 in the Science of Mind text. So it's all about what the word healing means to each one of us. I was in a meeting with someone about a month ago who, when I said, "I am here to promote and assure the healing of ... this person stopped me and said, "Well, what I have is incurable. I cannot heal from this." Yet there this person was, advocating on behalf of others who did not have what he had, which was living a vibrant life, purposeful life. So you see, healing, the word healing has as many people as there are to interpret it. If healing means to you or to me, for example, living forever, not to worry, that is inevitable. We live forever. However, we do this thing called transcending in life. For others, healing means being comfortable, functional, purposeful. Those things can be accomplished in so many ways. One of those was a man who just made his transition last week, Stephen Hawking, who lived for 76 human years here on planet Earth. And interestingly enough, he transitioned on Albert Einstein's birthday. And oh my goodness, didn't the news broadcasters have a field day with that one? Stephen Hawking was quite different physically. We all know that. And Stephen Hawking was quite different mentally. We all know that too. Now, which is normal? Which normal is the norm? Actually, it's in the eyes, the ears, and the words of the one defining or describing it, normal. In the Anatomy of Healing Prayer, there's a chapter on spiritual mind healing. It is so rich with wisdom and guidance that I cannot encapsulate it and do it justice here in 20 or 25 minutes. What I can do, though, is to encourage you to read that chapter and take from it whatever serves you best. Because your healing, or of any condition, thought, experience, or challenge, is based upon what you believe is for your highest and best good. As always, when I'm using words with multiple meanings, and in today's world, what word doesn't have multiple meanings? I go to recognized dictionaries for definitions. So let me share some of those with you now. The definition of the word healing: to alleviate, to ease, to assuage, to relieve. The process of making or becoming sound or healthy again. And then this one: the result of healing can be a cure to a health challenge, but one can heal without being cured. That is in a major dictionary in print in our society. How's that for a broad spectrum of definitions? And I only took a few of those that were offered. You could go on and on. You can really select the one that speaks to you. So, like the construction of anything of value, and certainly healing prayer is of value, there are steps to completion. And often actual steps leading upward. The same is true in mastering the art, the science, and the activity of affirmative prayer. So I'm going to briefly identify and elaborate, again briefly, on what are commonly referred to as the steps in spiritual mind treatment. This is rhetorical, however. The action is in the use of it. Dr. Holmes devotes over 50 pages in the Science of Mind text, and there are 85 references in the concordance as well to healing prayer, to spiritual mind treatment. So all of us have the opportunity to read that, to practice it, to join us when we do practice it in classes, to listen on Sunday morning, not only here, but again on YouTube, when a spiritual mind treatment touches you in some way that you'd really like to hear it again. Not to read it over and over in place of your own spiritual practice, but to glean from it how you can personalize that for yourself. So this doesn't mean any of this is difficult or intellectual. Holmes just says it in so many different ways that eventually it clicks in for each one of us. It is, however, successful as we use it. Sitting around contemplating the concept of it is lovely. Using it is successful. So, briefly, in the time I have left here, the first step in spiritual mind treatment is always recognition. I recognize that God is all there is. Spirit is all there is. Creative energy is all. You can call it whatever you want. But it's the source of your being. If you want to call it the source of your being, that's wonderful. That's the first step. And this is an infinite power. So when I recognize it, it's like I am connecting with it. And that is the second step, which is unification. God is all there is, and I am one with God. Like, where else would I come from? I know some science fiction movies and books have come up with other theories. However, that which has perpetuated down through history is that there is some kind of a source. We haven't necessarily seen it, but we know it. It's in our being. So we unify with that. I mean, look at the work it's already done, including but not limited to each one of us. So we become what that is to the degree that we're able to understand our unity with it. I am not at odds with it. Well, maybe not anymore. Rather, I embrace it. God is all there is, and I am one with that. And why wouldn't I want to be? It's a blending. It's a merging of our being with our creative source. It's already in us. It's simply our acknowledging of that. Then the third step, which I already talked about, which is that declaration or realization, is my fundamental reason for doing this spiritual mind treatment. What is it that I intend in my life, that I expect in my life, that I accept in my life? And to word that clearly, not necessarily in great detail, for don't you know, it's already in the mind of God, or you wouldn't be putting it through your own creative process. So being clear about it is the most important thing as compared to detail. You may do that if you wish. It isn't necessary if you don't, as long as you're clear the outcome that you choose. It either meets my expectations or it exceeds my expectations. And then the fourth step, and this is just so important, is the acceptance. In some places we call that gratitude or thanksgiving, which is lovely. But until you accept it into your own being, it's still rhetoric. So that acceptance step in actuality was the fourth and last step that Dr. Holmes talked about in the order of these steps in spiritual mind treatment. This is the only place in any of his writings that we could find the list of steps identified by him. And rather than gratitude or thanksgiving, the fourth step was acceptance. Now, of course, we're grateful. Of course, we accept and experience the thanksgiving, but that's not what makes it happen. Accepting it into your life is what makes it happen. And what's the result? Thanksgiving and gratitude. So be very certain that you are ready, willing, and able to accept the results of your words. And that's when they show up. We don't really know who or where the last step, release, which is the fifth step in our treatment work that we do. We're not really sure where that came from, because it didn't come from here. And it didn't come from Dr. Holmes, because that was innate as far as he was concerned. That once you accepted it, you had already released it. In our common use of the steps in spiritual mind treatment, we include the release step to remind you and me and all those who do spiritual mind treatment as their spiritual practice, I have spoken my word. I have made it very clear what my word is, and I have accepted it in my life, and now I let it go. Spirit has it. I had a prayer practitioner up in the Central Valley who used that in every one of his spiritual mind treatments. God has it. All is well. So releasing it means you don't go back and edit it. You don't wonder if it really made it to the source, or if it might be rejected. It would not be rejected by your source. It might be rejected by you, which means more acceptance work to do. But that's how these steps unfold. And you can hear the logic to them when you hear them in that order in explanation. So in part 3 of the Science of Mind text, Holmes has written these words. Healing is not a process, but a revelation. For the revealing of the perfect person always heals. The process, if there is one, is the time and thought it takes to arrive at the correct understanding of each person's perfect state in spirit. And so it is.